We look at the Horn of Africa now, Eritrea. It is isolated and underreported since the government shut down all private media outlets in 2001. The country has been embroiled in a series of regional disputes too. There was the war with neighbouring Ethiopia, which ended 10 years ago, but having claimed more than 100,000 lives. Jane Dutton went to interview Eritrea's president, Isaias Afwerki.
Mr. President, in December, the United Nations imposed sanctions on Eritrea for what they say was supporting armed groups like Al-Shabaab in Somalia. Do you feel as though you've been unfairly victimized?
It's a mockery of justice and history. In our political culture, we've never believed, and we don't believe, religion is an alternative or substitute for political, social, economic problems in any one country or any society. We've never entertained the idea of Sharia being a solution or Islam being a solution, as many may like to appreciate. How possibly can one blame Eritrea for sympathizing or supporting one group against the other in Somalia? We've never done that.
Why would the United Nations and the African Union say that this is what you are doing, that you're supporting?
Where are these evidences in the first place? What are they saying? That's where I come to say this is a mockery of justice.
Are you using Somalia as a battleground to fight Ethiopia?
It's not a battleground with Ethiopia. This border issue was a senseless conflict instigated by the United States in the first place, for the record.
If Ethiopia were to withdraw from Badme, that's the border town that you are referring to, if they had to withdraw from that, would you then take this country off the war footing?
It's not a problem with Ethiopia. We've never had any problems with Ethiopia. We worked with these people for almost 2 decades to remove a government in Ethiopia. And we wanted to see a relationship between Eritrea and Ethiopia based on mutual respect and commonality of interest. And we worked for decades for that. And now we're talking about a misguided policy of the United States that wants to create crisis here, political problems here and there, and micromanage those problems.
All those allegations leveled against Eritrea about being one of the main backers behind destabilizing this region, destabilizing the Horn of Africa. Is that not true?
Who is destabilizing the Horn of Africa? Who has been supporting warlords in Somalia for the last 20 years? Who has intervened in Somalia, invaded Somalia? Who has wanted to put governments from outside? We have 3 strategic interventions the last 8 or 10 years where people have tried to impose governments from outside.
And that's not what you're doing in this region.
This is destabilizing Somalia, and by destabilizing Somalia, you destabilize the region.
You are friends with both Iran and Israel. How do you balance the two?
And that is another joke, because why would the United States impose arms embargo on Eritrea, a small country with very limited resources, and not impose sanctions on the alleged role of Iran in the region? How can you possibly appreciate the logic behind this position of the United States?
Maybe you can clear up for us Iran's role in this region.
There is no role for Iran in this region. Eritrea is not for sale. Eritrea is not for sale.
Okay, let's talk about the people who live in this country. If I can just quote these to you, the United Nations stats estimate that almost 63,000 Eritreans applied for asylum last year alone, and that 1,800 cross over every month into Sudan. Why are they leaving the country?
These are lies. These are your lies.
Let's talk about the drought in the Horn of Africa. Eritrea, like all the other countries, is suffering from this, and yet you are reluctant to let aid workers into your country. What is the justification for that?
When we have enough food, why do we need someone to feed us?
Because 2/3 of your population are starving.
Why do people want to spoon feed us when we have enough food?
But then how come 2/3 of the population are not getting that food?
I mean, then again, how can you possibly imagine and say, I am hungry when I'm not hungry? Why do you want to believe that?
You promised Eritreans political reform. There are no political parties other than your own.
I do not promise.
I do
not promise anyone. I do not promise anyone. It's like a very wealthy person who controls everything and promises people that is going to tip them today, tip them tomorrow, tip them next day. We never do promises. The people here don't
you promised democracy?
No one here promises anybody anything.
You can't even...
There is nothing, there is no commodity called democracy.
It's the Eritrean president speaking there. Just give me a bit more background on the country now. Eritrea, the youngest state in Africa, after gaining independence from Ethiopia in 1993. Presidential elections planned for 1997 never materialized, and there's no free media in Eritrea. All privately owned media outlets were closed down in 2001. Let's talk more about this with a leading Eritrean opposition figure, Salih Sabah. He's also a political analyst and journalist, and he's live in Stockholm for us. Thank you for your time. Don't know if you heard the end of that interview there, but I'll just quote you what the president said. He said, "We did not promise political reform. No one here promises anybody anything." It's a very peculiar way for the leader of a country to be speaking, isn't it?
Yeah, he's actually, if somebody's lying here, it's Asias, because he's a good actor. We know that. We know him as an Eritrean. I know him well because this is what he's saying is just lying. He promised in 1991 to have an election. He had the constitution in Eritrea finished almost 95, and he promised the people that there's going to be a democratic way in Eritrea. But all that was lying. Just he pushed the country through the war against Ethiopia at that time because of the area of Badumi, and we haven't seen anything of any slight thing about the democratic process actually. And when he's talking that about the Eritrean people now and the food and everything, Eritrean people now are hungry. We know that from the report from the United Nations and from the Sudanese government, almost 150 persons coming to Sudan as refugees every day, and almost 40 persons coming to Ethiopia as refugees. And this is just telling us the truth. What's happening now in Eritrea, actually.
But it's not just that he's, if we talk about the election, the 1997 it was planned for, it's not just that he's backtracking on it. In that interview, he was saying, I never promised any of this.
Yeah, he's going to continue to say that even for the next 10 years. I think.
Why do you think that is?
We're not going to have anything. I think now he's making a power there. He and his groups, the gangs who's leading Eritrea with, they have the good benefit. Why the people are starving, they have the good opportunity to have everything. Actually, you have it at the dictatorship, so they have it. They live good. Actually, they have all the materials, all the what's called the sophisticated things in Eritrea which you need for living. He and his groups are living good. But the population, the Eritrean people are suffering actually. And now he's going to continue. He has Israel as a friend in the 19th. When he was done with Israel, so he tried to find a new friends, like now in Iran. He has Iran as a good friend. Iran gave him the gas and the petrol, the oil, I mean. And this is, yes, he's going to find all the times new friends. Now it's Iran. Next time is somewhere in Korea, other places in Africa. So this is Asias actually. He's going to try to find new friends all the time, just to make his living longer in Eritrea.
Very interesting relationships, isn't it? Salih Sabah, live in Stockholm for us. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.